Good morning, everyone. This is our Tuesday, December 1st Board of the County Commissioners work session. Commissioner Richardson Child is out at a Colorado County's winter conference, and we will proceed with a budget presentation, budget decision points, and wrap up for all funds. And Connie will present that.
So Connie Garofalo, Budget Director. This is our final budget review before the readings of the budget resolutions. Today's presentation material can be found in your budget binders under the 12th tab that says Final Budget Presentation, or online under the BOCC agenda or on the Finance webpage. And following the presentation material are attachments that include a fund balance summary, the Pitco County Table of Organization, and also the 5-year plans for each of the county funds. Our presentation today includes going through the general fund decision points and then an overview of the budgets of all county funds. So where have we been? This is our budget schedule. We had our first budget meeting on October 13th when we focused mainly on the general fund. And then in October and November, we followed up with meetings which were divided by the 3 different core focus areas of the county's strategic plan, where we went in depth into the different departments and funds and their proposed budgets for 2016. And during those 3 meetings, we had decision points for special revenue and enterprise fund budgets. We also had separate meetings on the district attorney and the healthy community fund budgets. And now today we're doing a recap, wrapping up the process, and presenting the decision points for the general fund. We will also have the ambulance district present the budget today, and then on December 8th we have the first reading of the budget resolutions, and December 15th the final readings and adoption of the budget. So the big rocks analogy is one that John Peacock has probably mentioned to you before. It has to do with the countywide priorities that need to be addressed first in our budget process. The idea is that if you fill up the jar first with all of the little things, the sand and the pebbles, then you won't have room to fit in the big things, the big priorities, which are the big rocks. And so in the early part of our budget process in May and June, as we were meeting with county staff and the budget review team, we asked them to identify what those big rocks are for 2016, what they think our priorities should be. And so these 3 that are shown on this slide are what staff recommended. Facilities was also a big rock or a priority in our 2015 budget process. And the points that staff felt should be included are the long-term vision for facilities, building to both current and future needs in a way that's responsible, and then also recognizing that there are facility needs beyond the Courthouse Plaza project. Organizational capacity was another priority or a big rock that staff identified. I think John has used the metaphor with you before, the pig and the python. The idea that we have a lot of very large projects, some of which have been put off for many years and now are being addressed all at once by the county. And as we're taking on all of these big projects, there's the need for the county to have adequate capacity to manage these projects well as we're facing a larger amount of work than our normal average workflow. So under the organizational capacity, there are increased demands on internal services. We need analysis and planning resources within the organization, and there's also a need for project management. And then the third big rock is retention and recruitment. As the economy improves, there's more pressure put on these areas within the county for pay and benefits, development opportunities, training, and also succession planning. And then looking at the general fund, what is in our proposed budget for 2016? Well, operations, we are projecting a 4.4% increase to revenue and only a 1.5% increase to expenditures. And so this modest 1.5% increase includes all of the additions that we have put in the operating budget for the general fund.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. When we started the budget process, the increase to expenditures was 1.7. So during the budget process, we were able to reduce it. Any specifics?
That's right. Mainly just minor tweaking. As we're going through the process, there are always things that come up that either we've overlooked or need to add in, minor changes that occur. And so the original numbers that we bring in October are our best estimates at that time. And then we go through and we keep looking to make sure that we're including everything. And in this case, we actually had a little bit of a reduction.
Okay, great, thanks.
In the capital fund side, it's a bit different picture. We have a 359% increase to revenue. This includes the $16 million in proceeds from certificates of participation or bonds. There's no new tax revenue here. The capital fund is funded by 52% of our sales tax revenue stream, and that's the same as it was last year. So there's no increase at all to taxes. It just includes the proceeds from bonds or certificates of participation. And then there's also a 338% increase to expenditures because we have the Courthouse Plaza remodel and addition included in the capital budget.
Connie, let me ask you, is that increase to revenue, the certificates of participation, have we signed off on those yet?
No, not yet. This is what we're projecting for
This is a
2016.
projection.
That's right. And so what does it leave us at the end of 2016? If everything goes according to budget, we will finish 2016 with a total fund balance in the general fund of 41% of operating expenditures, or 20% of total expenditures, including both capital and operating.
So is there any need to more clearly explain to the public the capital fund issues? So, I mean, because they're going to, I'm afraid the newspaper may just put the headline, county's capital fund budget's increasing by 338%. As far as expenditures. So most of these dollars are all really focused on the facilities issues.
The increase,
yeah.
Yes. The increase would be far smaller, more in line with the operations if we did not have the Courthouse Plaza project in this year. And of course, in our capital fund, we are going to see swings that up and down. In the past, we've used a save and spend philosophy where we save up for a few years and then we do some bigger projects and spend our capital fund balance down. And so it's normal that we see changes and bigger swings in the capital than in our operations. Our operations, we want to see steady, which is pretty much what we have here, a very small increase and a greater increase to revenue than expenditures. So it's important to keep the operations balanced to match our expenditures to our ongoing revenues. But the capital, we should expect to see dips and highs and lows in the capital side.
Because in the past years, when I was not on the board a lot of that was related to road and bridge, to road improvements, right? You were transferring money so we could do those road projects that had been put off for years. So this time it's a bigger transfer for a bigger project.
Right. And in the past, over the past 4 years since we created the capital fund, we have spent about $16 million on roads.
Right.
Had large investments in roads. And now we're down to more of a maintenance level on roads and are spending more on facilities. So we do expect to see swings as we're going along in the capital fund.
Thank you.
Connie, could you explain the total fund balance, what you mean by 41% and 20%? What are you talking about?
Yes, so and if you don't mind, I'll skip ahead onto the fund balance chart here. If you look at the two green segments of this chart, the bottom one, the light green, is our Tabor Reserve, and then the darker green is what the commissioners have recommended that we set aside in a rainy day fund or a reserve, a contingency. These two green areas put together equals 16.7% of our ongoing operating expenditures. That's what the Governmental Finance Officers Association, the GFOA, recommends to have in fund balance set aside. That's kind of a generic recommendation for a healthy fund balance. And so this is what we're identifying here in our general fund balances as our reserves, the green segments. The yellow is restricted for certain specific purposes. And then the blue is really the discretionary area, the unrestricted fund balance. And this is above and beyond the GFOA recommendation. So we have very healthy fund balances, even as we're spending down some of our capital fund balance. We still maintain healthy fund balances here. So when we're talking about fund balances here, we're looking at our fund balance as a percentage compared to our ongoing operating expenditures. So if 16.7% is considered healthy and good, and we're at 41%, that means we're above and beyond the recommendation. So we're in a good financial position, which allows us, if there were, say, a downturn in the economy or other unforeseen circumstances or a natural disaster, it allows the board room to make adjustments or to not have to make precipitous decisions, that there's room there to work with in our fund balance.
Okay, and then 20% of total expenditures?
Right. If we include all of our capital, so our largest capital expenditure ever, which is the Courthouse Plaza project, if we include that whole capital budget in the calculation to figure our percentage, we're still at 20% of total expenditures. So even with all of the capital included, it's still a healthy fund balance. So this slide shows the 2016 budget and 5-year plan for the operations side of the general fund. The green column is the 2016 budget, and we start at the top with revenues. So it starts in the green column, property tax, sales tax, and so on, listing out the different revenue streams for general fund operations. We have a total revenue budget for 2016 of $25.9 million. And then below that are the expenditures, labor, services, and supplies, and so on. And we have $26.4 million in projected expenditures. Then below that are the transfers between funds. And what we end up with is an annual surplus in general fund operations of $11,807. A small surplus, but it is a surplus. And then going across towards the right of the chart, we see 2017 through 2020, we have even larger surpluses in the out years of the 5-year plan. Our average annual surplus is $282,000.
And what percentage of that is that of the total expenditures, the surplus? Do you know?
That looks like it's about 1% of the total expenditures. So this is a decision point for the board if you are in agreement with our operating 5-year plan.
I have a question. So the question that the public asks frequently is, what is the county's budget?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to give them one answer because of all of our different funds. So if I was to answer this based on our general fund, I would say the general fund budget is, total expenditures is
$26.4 million, yes.
And then, because then when they see the pie charts with all these numbers and the 105 million at the top, and the public is like, is the county's budget really 105 million? And it's sometimes difficult to explain them. You've got the library fund, the airport fund, and all these different pockets of money because of how those funds have been set up. So I think that's an important number for the public to see, that our general fund the total expenditures is 26.4 million.
That's right. Those are our core services, sheriff's office and health and
Right,
human
the fundamentals.
services, road and bridge.
Okay.
You guys okay with this?
Yeah, I'm okay moving it forward.
Well, we can move it forward.
Okay, great.
So next we have the general fund 10-year capital plan. Again, in the green column is the 2016 proposed budget, and we start with revenues on the very top section of the chart. 52% of our sales tax is to fund the capital plan. That allows us flexibility. Our sales tax is one of our more volatile revenues, and so if we do have dips in sales tax, it's easier to scale back on capital plan projects than it is on our operations. So that's why our main funding stream here is sales tax. $4.9 million in revenue in the capital plan. And then we list the different areas that are funded in the capital plan: information technology, dispatch and public safety, vehicles, roads, and facilities. Our total expenditures are $26.9 million. And of course, this does include the large budget over $22 million for the Courthouse Plaza project. Down below that, you see $16 million certificates of participation, or whatever bonds or funding mechanism will be most appropriate at the time when we are doing it. In the out years, we have put $1 million per year in debt service payments, included that in this plan. And then we have a positive fund balance down at the bottom. In 2017 through 2025, the out years of the plan, we average about $4.5 million in expenditures each year in the plan. That's for the ongoing maintenance of our basic county infrastructure. Are there any questions on the capital fund?
I'm good moving it forward.
Okay.
And so we've looked at the fund balance chart already. The fact that the unrestricted fund balance is steady and even growing through the course of the 10-year plan shows that we have a balanced operations, a balanced budget, that our revenues are matching our expenditures. So next we have the table of organization for Pitkin County, which shows the number of full-time equivalent positions. We went back to 2008 to give some history all the way through the proposed 2016 budget. And we list each department and area of the county so that you can see the changes there. As we're looking at this table of organization, it's important to see how much we are actually growing. Remember from the earlier slide that our operating expenditures are growing by only 1.5%. And so although we're adding FTEs, our expenditures are not growing by very much at all. What's really happening is that we're not growing our government, but we're doing business in a different way. There are many services that we used to contract out, and so the dollar amount was not in our employees, not in our FTEs, but in contract services. And many areas, as different parts of the county have taken a look at it, we've realized that it's either a better service to citizens or a more financially prudent way to go to bring some of those services in-house and hiring employees. So that's why we can add FTEs without actually raising our budget more than the 1.5%. Some of the areas that were outsourced previously that we've brought in-house are our information technology, our BITS department that was outsourced before to the city of Aspen. Our veteran service officer was a contract previously. At the landfill operations was contracted out. Translator services were contracted out previously. Public Works are a new engineer that was added that used to be part of the contract budget for capital projects. And so even though the FTE increase seems large, again, the overall budget has not increased by that much. And this is a decision point. Are there questions on the table of organization?
What are the increases in the admin manager, the first?
So admin manager, one is not an actual position increase. It was a transfer of a position that was in the clerk's department before, but
Right.
is now moved to the manager's department. And then the other addition is the best and brightest intern that we've had for 2 years that we are proposing to bring on staff as a management analyst.
Perfect. Just wanted to clarify that.
All set?
Yeah.
Michael?
I'm looking here, so there's a lot of little lines, it's hard to see. So what were the 2 employees added to Open Space and Trails then?
So Open Space and Trails has gradually been adding staff as their program has changed. At the beginning of the Open Space and Trails Fund, the main priority was acquisitions, but as they've acquired more and more land and more trails, there's a need to be able to manage that land and manage the trails and make sure that rules are complied with, so that they have gradually been adding resources, rangers and seasonal workers and so on. There is I think it's a resource specialist is what they're proposing for 2016, which is under Gary and basically is performing the functions that Gary originally did at the beginning of the fund.
Okay, so and then in Solid Waste Center, there's 3 added employees, but what you're saying is that the contract that we had with Solid Waste Center, those costs are now being absorbed by us and adding 3 employees, but the net effect is only an increase of, what did you say, 1.5%?
1.5 is the general fund. Of course, the Solid Waste Center is not in the general fund, but the general fund's expenditures are actually decreasing because they're bringing the contract in-house.
Okay. It's hard to process that, but because I think like Patty, you get this number from a change of about 20 employees in 1 year.
That's right. 16 between 2015 and 16. 10 of those were added mid-year 2015. Part of those were new grants that we were receiving from the state for human services. And so we've brought in new staff in human services as we've received the funding to cover those positions from the state. Fleet in 2015 brought in a new position as they had an IGA with the fire district to perform the maintenance on the fire district vehicles. And so many of the positions have been because we have new funding sources to cover them or new arrangements. Again, it's a different way of doing business rather than contracting out, looking to see whether it's a better business decision to bring the FTEs in-house.
How do you control that going forward? So now you have this sort of baseline where you can compare it with last year's or a couple of previous years, and you can come up with those figures. But now going forward, we're cut loose from those measurements.
Mm-hmm.
So what measurement should we use going forward? Is it just the increase to our general fund that we should keep an eye on? Or the percentage of those, I don't know.
Well, of course, we're going to look at the bottom line for each and every fund and make sure that we stay healthy. As we're going on every year, for example, in our general fund, we're projecting out what we think our revenues will be in the out years. We're projecting the percentage increases for labor, for health insurance, for all of our other costs to make sure that we're in line with our revenues. And that's what we need to do for each of our funds. We need to make sure that our expenditures are in line with our revenues. And if they're not, then we need to make changes. And so as we're in our budget process the following year, if changes have occurred that we need to take into consideration, then we'll need to evaluate and see where we're at. And it's a year-to-year process. Right now, based on everything that we can forecast, the advice of our financial advisory board, county staff, we feel like we have a healthy budget that has revenues to meet our expenditures. But of course, we have to react to changing situations as we're going forward and keep evaluating what's the best decision, what's the best business decision for the county to make as far as how we provide services to citizens.
Okay, thank you, Connie.
I think Michael's questions are well made, because it's a concern when mine, having been here when we had the recession, had to lay people off, and how difficult that was to do for everybody. And I think since we have some of these positions in human services that are relying upon grants, and that needs to be remembered, that those positions were funded, therefore brought on, and if those grant issues change. The other issue I think the public really needs to be aware of is the unfunded mandates that are coming down from the state, especially related to the human services. A lot of child protection issues, adult and child protection issues, and that has caused us a need to increase staff to manage those new unfunded mandates. And that's a difficult one. We can't really tell the state, sorry, we don't have the money, we're not doing it, because we have to. So to be able to acquire grants, which is, part of a grant writing process, I think is of huge importance that the public knows. We're trying our best to keep our costs down by trying to find state grants or wherever we find grants to fund some of these positions. Mm-hmm. I think those are important things for the public to realize. I'm comfortable moving it forward because we've discussed it and we've been very careful.
Okay, Michael?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this chart really wraps up the budgets for all of the different county funds. A lot of numbers on it, but if you look at the first column towards the left, it shows what we're projecting to be our beginning fund balance for the beginning of 2016. We have the general fund up at the top of the chart with operations and capital, and then as you move down the chart, our special revenue funds, our enterprise funds or proprietary funds, general improvement districts, and so on. The next column over is our budgeted revenues for 2016, so our resources. And then the next column are budgeted expenditures. The next column is the transfers between funds. And then the column after that, the ending fund balance, that's the result of everything. It's the result of our 2016 budget, where we think we'll end up at the end of 2016. Overall, for the whole county, we project that we'll end 2016 with a fund balance of $51.6 million. This is a decrease of almost $4 million from prior year. But it's important to note that this would actually be an increase of about $12 million if it were not for our Courthouse Plaza project and for the investments in employee housing that we think will happen in 2016. So the decrease in fund balance is due to large capital projects. We are left with 49% fund balance compared to total expenditures, both operating and capital. So that is a healthy overall fund balance for all county funds for the county. Are there questions on this chart?
I again want to point out that number is kind of scary for the public, is to just look at this column of 2016 budgeted expenditures of $105.4 million. They need to really look at the side that breaks them down into all the different funds that the county collects for, the enterprise funds, proprietary funds, etc. And I think the public needs to know that those are, it's difficult to comprehend when you're looking at 26 million or 25 million and 105 million, and that's the difference. These are other fund balances that move forward within the county.
Connie, how much money do you think we'll save by not heating this room? So is there a possibility that we get some heat in here, Phyllis? Can you talk to?
Yeah, emailed them.
It's like really, really
It's chilly.
cold in here.
Making my nose run, it's so chilly.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Connie. You're doing a great job.
Hopefully we'll have better insulation once the building is remodeled.
We'll have insulation, period.
Other questions?
So the pie chart is just an example of the previous slide, right?
That's right. So this just puts in more of a visual format all of the expenditure budgets for 2016, 105 million total. And it is just interesting to see what pieces are larger or bigger. Our general fund operations are about a quarter of the total. But then the general fund capital is another quarter. Normally it wouldn't be anywhere near that big. It's our large project for the plaza remodel and addition, the 22 million. And then the third largest segment that you see there is the transit sales and use tax. That's mainly pass-through money that the county spends for RAFTA and for public transportation. And then as we've gone through the budget process, we've presented the budget to you in 3 different core focus meetings. So this is just, again, a visual representation of the expenditure budgets for those 3 different areas. Just another look at how we could divvy it up. Flourishing natural and built environment is $59.6 million. That's 56% of the total county budget. And facilities is the largest part of that. Transit sales and use tax the next. Livable and supportive community is $28 million, or 27% of the total county budget. And here the housing fund and public safety are the 2 largest areas. And then prosperous economy is 17% of the total county budget, or $17.6 million. And the airport is the largest segment in this core focus area. So throughout the budget process, we have touched on the success factors in each of the core focus areas of the county's strategic plan. And we've talked about the 2016 initiatives that are planned in each of these areas. We believe that the 2016 budget aligns with the county's strategic plan, and that we are working to address the success factors and provide good services for citizens and maintain our county government in a responsible way.
Connie, I'm sorry, can we go back a few pages
Sure.
to restricted fund balances?
Yes.
So we have $478 in park dedication fees?
Yes, that has been almost entirely spent down. If there is a $700,000 line item that will be carried forward, and I am unsure if that's going to be spent out of park dedication fees or out of open space. But if that budget is spent, then we are left with $478, yes.
Okay, and we no longer collect park dedication fees, do we?
I believe not, but I'm not sure.
I don't think we do. Was that for the Redstone Park?
Yeah, I think it was, but, so the state Superfund tip fees, and that's something we get at the landfill?
Yes, we collect those at the landfill, and they are used to fund the Smuggler Superfund site for any improvements or work that needs to be done there.
So those are Superfund tip fees of material that comes from the Superfund site, and that is taken to the landfill?
No, I believe that it's a charge that
It's
is
just a
on
surcharge?
other collections, but I don't have the details on that. We can bring that to you if you'd like.
And the veterans, these are small, but they're interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The Veterans Memorial Fund is fund. Do we have a fund that we fund that for?
No, right now, what they would like to do is go ahead and spend down this little fund balance that they have, and then just have the general fund support the ongoing costs. The ongoing costs are relatively small. It's for wreaths for the different services that we hold throughout the year at the Veterans Memorial, and for the the sound system that they have during those services.
So we put that under a veteran services budget or something like that?
Right. Once this little balance is gone, we will just be paying it out of the general fund.
And Tipsy Taxi has $80,000. I see, that's a substantial sum. How is that funded?
I believe that this balance has mainly come through donations, and that in the past there was fundraising that was done for the Tipsy Taxi, and that's why we have a balance here.
Mhm. And that's used to provide rides for people who might be intoxicated and need a ride home, rather than drive their own vehicle.
Right.
The $10 motor vehicle fee?
Yeah, the next two lines there, the $10 motor vehicle fee and the $1 e-recording surcharge, those are both within the clerk's office. These are amounts that the state has mandated how much they can charge in these different areas and what those extra charges can be spent on. And so since there are restrictions on how those are collected and what they can be spent on, we put them in a separate restricted fund balance.
And that's within the budget of the clerk's office?
That's correct.
And then the animal shelter has $90,000? How is that raised?
We've been setting aside from our general fund balance $10,000 each year in order to have money available when there needs to be capital improvements done to the animal shelter.
And that's a decision that we make, the commissioners make, or the board of the animal shelter?
I'm not sure what the process is on that.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's find out some of those things.
Okay.
Some details.
We can bring those back.
Thank you, Connie.
Any other questions on the budget? So, Connie, December 8th is when this first comes before us for approval for first reading, and then final approval with public comment will be on December 15th.
That's right.
All right, so that concludes the budget portion. We're waiting, ambulance district will be coming in at 10.
At 10,
So why
right.
don't we move ahead and look at future agendas.
Thank you, Connie, well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Connie.
So George, is the first meeting is a special meeting on a Tuesday for budget? Is that a special meeting and the next one is a regular BOCC
No, the
meeting?
Tuesday, December 8th is a normal work session, and December 15th is a special meeting.
Okay,
December 15th will be a special meeting. It's not on a work session day, but we'll call a special meeting for that.
right, for the budget, so we can move it forward, because it's a two-read, is that correct?
It is a two-read and needs to be approved by the 15th.
Perfect, okay.
So, future
Destroyed my-
agendas.
I tore it apart before we...
Phyllis?
I don't have anything.
I mentioned this last week, on December 8th, let's see. December 8th, I suggested that we rearrange the schedule and have the exec session in the afternoon, so we're not, oh no, it was rearranged, I'm sorry. It's fine.
Okay.
What was the other one? Oh, I see, it has been rearranged, okay. Anybody have anything for future agendas?
I have just a question, and I don't know if we have the answer. When will we be seeing the event, or will we be seeing the event application for X Games? I see we have the marijuana and the alcohol one coming forward on the 16th of December.
I don't know.
Because the dates are, right around the corner.
Things that come through community development don't work into our calendar as quickly as our regular
Okay.
agenda items. And right now, staff are working on an agenda item development process with both community development and administration, and trying to come up with
Better
a
flow.
streamlined way and a better flow so that the community development items end up on future agendas,
Yep.
because they're not always, they're usually scheduled, but they don't appear on future agendas.
Okay. Thanks.
So we haven't gotten the X game approval, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it hasn't come before us.
So what's it, I mean, I have a hard time understanding how that would work, because they are in the process of constructing the site, acting as if.
It's moving forward.
It's moving forward, so the effect of us I mean, I don't quite, it doesn't seem like a process where we're actually reviewing. It seems like a process of rubber stamping.
I don't know the process, so let me get with community development and Mike, because I'm sure
Yeah, because I mean, I
there's
think
something going on
if
there.
we need to approve something, it should occur before the construction. In other words, you get a building permit, and when you get that building permit, you're allowed, this is an analogy, you're allowed to proceed with your building project. In this case, they're building the project and then expect to have a permit after the project is constructed. So I think we need to try to work on that logic, or at least somebody needs to explain that logic to me, because it doesn't fit what I would call the proper order of things.
Well, I asked this a week or so ago when I saw the scaffolding going up. Actually, it was before Buttermilk was open. And it seemed earlier than normal for the scaffolding. Well, maybe it wasn't, but I did notice it before. And it's my understanding it's a proceed at your own risk. So that we could say, sorry, you haven't met all these requirements and criteria. We could say no, and they'd have to take it all down. I think my understanding is the difference is the actual permit would be for the event, and that they can actually put up the scaffolding now because of timing, whether there's some things they need to do, and they're doing it at their own risk, because it could come down to, we say no.
Yeah, that's what I'm struggling with, because I would think that an approval for the process in July would make some sense, not in the last part of the year.
Or in January.
Well, I'm assuming it's an administrative special permit process that just runs through community development. We could clarify that. I know that the one question we had that came before us was a question of noise in terms of the late concerts, and we gave feedback, and I'm assuming that they took that feedback into their plan, but we have not heard back on that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, let me see if I can't get someone either to answer me now, or in
Next week.
Next week, to give you at least an
Or tomorrow.
overview of the process and how it works, so you know where the status of that event is.
Yeah, or even tomorrow we can.
Yeah.
Do it at open
So
discussion.
George, what you're saying is that the administrative approval goes through, that we have no approval of this process? Or
I'm not sure. I'm suggesting that may be the process, and Phyllis will clarify that with ComDev.
So we have the ability to make comments, as we did about the scheduling of the events at the place, but then those comments are taken by community development and maybe incorporated in the final approval. But we don't know that.
Right.
So
I'll find out.
Yes, great.
Thank you.
I just think we need this is for the commissioners, I think we need a more, a clear way of doing this, and so, and a way that it occurs before the event is, you can stop a steamroller, I suppose, by lying down in front of it, but it's unlikely that you would do it. So I don't know quite what we're doing, so.
Yeah, at some point, we did do an approval for, I think it was a budget supplemental. I mean, we had to approve budget that was requested for the sheriff's in-kind services. Somehow that came earlier, but yeah, the sequence is a little unclear.
Yeah, I agree.
And of course, it spans over 6-8 months, so we sort of lose some of that context as well.
Right.
And I think in some cases, events happen on a shorter time frame. This one is planned years in advance. And I think Michael's right, that they could be done in a more timely manner to be moved forward with permitting.
Right, and I'm assuming for future events, pro challenge cycle race, that we start to probably look at as early as January or February.
As soon as they identify the routes that they're going to be taking.
Right. Okay.
But that again is like, well, we're going to change that route, which has happened, right? They do it within weeks. So I'm struggling with our role in it, And I'm just struggling with it, that's all I'm saying.
All right, good point.
Good questions.
Okay, no, any other comments or additions to future agendas at this point?
Nope.
All right, so let's see, we can move on to open discussion. Phyllis, do we have anything from?
I have one item. The Alpine Area on Aging is asking for us to appoint representatives to the Regional Advisory Council. Marty has told us that Peg McGavick has been a representative and is willing to be a representative
She
again.
does a great job.
And we need 3. Steve Child had voiced an interest. He's not here, so I'm not sure. And then we need a 3rd. The next senior council meeting is in January. The first of this advisory council is a week before the next senior council meeting, because Marty thought she would ask her current senior council if someone was interested in being on that council. So she's going to do that before the meeting, but if you all had any recommendations.
With Steve's involvement with the state level with aging, I think it'd be great if he wanted to participate. Peg does a great job, and if you want, I'll be the alternate since I do most of the COG stuff anyway. Or if the senior council comes back with something, we can always change it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like this is set in stone for the year, so somebody could come back and, because there might be somebody on the senior council who's really interested in doing it. But that's the direction I would go at this time. If that sound okay?
So we'll repeat with Peg. I'll check with Steve if this, because I'm pretty sure he said he was interested. And then
Yeah.
Patty, we'll put you down as an alternate
We'll see what the
for
senior
now, and
council
then
does.
we'll see if the senior council has any representative.
Good.
Well, that was the only item that I have.
Open discussion, commissioners?
I don't have anything.
Okay, we've got membership board reports on this list. Seems like we just did that, but we could probably have a quick update.
Northwest COG, yeah, what we're doing is, we have our final meeting of budget is coming up on Thursday, and it's a phone call meeting. We've changed the meeting format to having mostly phone conference meetings, and I am going to try and go over and actually sit at the table with the COG staff and with the chair, which is Karen Stegmeyer from Summit County, because I'm going to propose that we look at our spring, summer, fall meeting agendas and maybe have more face-to-face meetings. They've kind of consolidated the meetings because of budget issues and time issues to the I-70 corridor when we have face-to-face meetings. And I think COG is losing its interactivity, its interactions between jurisdictions. So I'm going to see if we can't try this summer to do maybe a meeting off the I-70 corridor, like Kremling or Grand County somewhere, Grand Lake. So we actually go sit down and talk to each other and see what's going on in those communities. It may be acceptable to the rest of the membership, it may not, but I'm going to throw it out there because I just feel it's lacking. That's what COG was always so great, is you had these face-to-face meetings, and we did have a lot of them, and it was a lot of drive time. So maybe we can look at refining that and having a few more meetings. So that's what I'm going to bring up. But other than that, COG's just working on the budget. I think the staff over there is doing a great job. There's been a couple of changes with staffing, but it's moving along. The weatherization program is doing great. The elevators going through the roof, literally. So it's been interesting. So that's the only thing going on there. Rural Resort Region, which is really not that. It's really that workforce group. And we've got the budget, and again, most of their activities are on the I-70 corridor. We're trying to bring in some more workshops, employment workshops, opportunities over in the Roaring Fork Valley, so we're hoping to do that in the next year.
All right, great, thanks. Corp, we did not have a meeting since the last time we gave an update. Our QQ, CCI, Club 20, and Roundtable, Rachel is at a Winter Colorado Counties Conference. Root Eye Water and Power.
We just had a meeting, and we discussed they sponsored a water summit. It was very
Right.
successful. 50 people plus showed up. So the talk was how to fund it going forward, because it was successful. and people were anxious to do it again, Ruapa has to find a way of funding it, because it takes it. So we might have an increase in dues or some other funding source. So that was the discussion there. Acro, we had a retreat, and it was very interesting. I can't actually remember much of the specifics. We did a lot of work, a lot of flip charts, and it was good. Acro was smarting over the vote on the base, whatever it was. So they were trying to sort of decide who they were again. So and RAFTA, I guess we approved our final budget. Is that right, George?
We did the budget, and I'm not sure what else we worked
Yeah.
on.
And so RAFTA's going strong.
Can I ask an accurate question?
Sure.
Do they have any plans for their new, where they're going to go? If the city does move forward, what it looks like they're going to do with taking over that space at the parking garage?
Not that I know of.
I know it's
You know,
a couple
they-
years out maybe, but
Yeah, this place that they have now is not really adequate, and so I don't know. It's hard to get the public to go down below the parking. You know, it's not
Yeah.
a great place. Maybe they should talk to the Forest Service and
put them out in the corner.
put them on the corner there, and
Yeah.
hand out Forest Service stuff. So I don't know.
That's a good thought.
They're working on it.
Let's see, senior council, Steve Child is at the winter conference. Nordic Council, I think we did do an approval of the master plan here that was presented through open space. The Intermountain TPR did not meet. Renewable Energy Roundtable, this is new, I've not seen this on this list before.
Yeah, I didn't know what that
Uh,
was.
Yeah,
I think Rachel asked for that, but there was a conference, so I don't know why it's on here.
I mean, if we have individual conferences, I'm not sure that's.
That shouldn't be on there.
Right.
That was just
Commissioners
that
can
conference
certainly always update whatever they're doing.
It's the conference Clear was doing, wasn't it?
I don't think it ever happened. Or
I'll
Oh.
check with staff.
Well, we didn't know about it. I don't think they invited Core.
They did not invite Core.
Yes, that was interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so that's board
Yeah.
reports. We're just about on schedule for ambulance district. Is anybody else coming in, Dan, from ambulance?
Yes.
Okay,
I
so why don't we
certainly
take let's take a short break.
We are moving along.
Let's take a 10-minute break here, and then we'll finish up.
We're done.
I'm gonna look for another coat.
I'm going to get a blanket.
Our final agenda item, which is the ambulance district budget, and Connie will introduce the topic and introduce the guests, or they can introduce themselves.
So, starting off with just an overview of the ambulance district proposed budget for 2016, and then the 5-year plan, and then we'll move on to the representatives from the ambulance and Aspen Valley Hospital. So the first item to look at is the mill levy. In 2014, voters approved an increased mill levy for the ambulance district of .501 mills. However, right after that was approved, for 2016 budget, the commissioners recommended reducing and not collecting the full amount in 2015, putting it at an 80% level at .4 mills. Now for 2016, our recommendation is to still maintain a reduced level, not taking the full mill levy, but at a 90% level of .45 mills, building up a little bit more reserves as we're going into an ambulance barn building project. So this is the recommendation that we used in building the 5-year plan for the ambulance district. This spreadsheet shows the 2016 budget and then 5-year plan. The green column is the 2016 budget, and at the top we start with revenues, And the first line is the property tax. That is the main funding source for the ambulance district. What you see here on this chart is at the 90% funding level of 0.45 mils for each year of the 5-year plan. That gives a total revenue for 2016 of about $1.1 million. Down below the revenues are the expenditures, and you'll see that the largest expenditure amount that we list here is the payment to Aspen Valley Hospital for the provision of ambulance services. And as the hospital and ambulance staff talk to you, they will talk in more detail about what makes up that dollar amount. The hospital has their own revenues and expenditures, and this $335,000 is the net amount that it takes in property tax support in order to fund that ambulance service. And then the county also pays for other overhead costs, replacement costs, equipment, and vehicles for the ambulance district. So the total operating expenditures we're showing at $767,000 plus another $300,000 in planning and design for the new ambulance barn for a total of almost $1.1 million in expenditures. This leaves an annual surplus for 2016 of $32,000.
George, I have a question.
Yes.
On the planning for the facility study and design, does that mean we spent $300,000 in 15, we're planning to spend another? So it's $600,000 for planning and design?
That's correct. They're estimating about 10% of what they think the total construction cost will be.
Which is pretty norm.
That's right. And you do see in 2017, right now, the estimate for the construction is $6 million. That's under the facilities construction section towards the bottom of the spreadsheet. And we will need to have some form of financing for that $6 million, whether it's certificates of participation or bonds or something else. And we included in this 5-year plan an estimate of debt service payments of $375,000 a year for 2017 and then going on through the 5-year plan.
And will you further explain the need for the new facility as part of your presentation, so I don't have to ask it now?
Absolutely. So the facility that we're in currently is...
Excuse me, why don't you introduce yourself
Oh,
and maybe
sorry.
Introduce everyone who's behind you.
Sure. So I am Gabe Muthing. I'm the director of the Aspen Ambulance District. And behind me, I have Elaine Gerson, who is the chief clinical officer for Aspen Valley Hospital. Jeanette Siebenaller, who is the assistant CFO of the hospital. And then to the other side here is Terry Collins, CFO of Aspen Valley Hospital. And in the back is Dan Bonk, CEO of Aspen Valley Hospital.
Thank you all for coming today.
Brought the gang today.
So we wanted to first present the 5-year plan, which is the county's side of the budgeting for the ambulance district, so that you could see the full picture. And if you don't have any questions on this, we will move on to their presentation.
Yeah, just, you can answer my question as part of your presentation. We'll be good there. Thanks.
Any questions
questions on
on
the
this
budget
before we move
specifically?
on?
Nope.
So I thought it would be a good idea just to kind of give you an update as to where we are now, and especially after our increase in mill levy in 2014 taking effect in 2015. So just as a reminder, Aspen Ambulance District was formed as a special district under the Home Rule Charter in 1982. We currently contract with Aspen Valley Hospital to manage the service. We serve a pretty large area, 162 square miles. Certainly in the winter that closes down a little bit, but it is a pretty good sized area. Our goal and our main reason for existing is we're certainly providing emergency medical services and then transport of those medical patients to a hospital. Again, a reminder, our mill levy increased to 0.501 mils for 2015. Just a little bit about us, 30 dedicated men and women working for Aspen Ambulance District, providing ALS care to the Roaring Fork Valley. We also do some state support, as well as we can also be deployed to national disasters. So what do? We do a little bit of everything. We are main focus is to provide medical care for whatever ailment, issue, injury you have. So keep in mind that our folks really do have a really wide scope of practice that they do, and they can help out in any way with our community. We really operate at a high level of service here, which is kind of unprecedented in most smaller communities. So we are branching off much more now into public health, as I'll get into in a minute. And then we also do a significant amount of patient education in regards to teaching CPR, first aid in our community. Certainly we're an active community, and that's a very important part for us to do.
Dave, can I ask
Yes,
you,
sir.
a year or two ago, I forget when, there was some legislation that was before the state that was going to allow ambulance services to provide some additional assistance to go actually out to homes for home care or assess help in that.
Absolutely. It's called the Community Paramedic Program. And it essentially takes us out of an emergency role and puts us more into a preventative role, and preventing folks from needing to go to the hospital for an emergency or for an ailment. What we would do would be go out into the home. We would go through with the patient in regards to their medications that they're on, any home care that they need. There's an interesting gap in healthcare right now where a home healthcare nurse, which I think most people are familiar with, can go out into the home and do these things. But there's a few days right after that you may not qualify for that. You may just need simple care that doesn't qualify for a home health care nurse. And what community paramedicine does is it allows us to go out in a non-emergency fashion without lights and sirens and all the commotion, and actually help those people out and hopefully prevent them from needing to go to a hospital. It's a great program. We are, I was going to mention that here in a bit, but we'll just go through it. It's a great program, and as you said, we have had some legislation in the state now that will allow us to do this. It's still being built. It's still a program that is brand new, but we are already pushing towards that way here for our community. I think it'd be a fantastic tool for us to have and really help out our citizens. We hope to have that program up and running by the fall. There is a short bit of education that's additional to what a paramedic normally receives. We'll have that hopefully in the spring is when those courses will be up and running. We'll do that in the spring, have an implementation period throughout the summer, or a development period throughout the summer, and then implementation in the fall is our goal. So we're going to stick to that right now. We'll see how things go within the state and that model as is. So does that answer your question? It's a great program. We're really looking forward to it. I'm very excited that we'll be able to finally move ahead with this. It's been a long road, certainly at the state level. But,
So as part of that process, you'll develop an outreach process, procedures, so people are aware of the program and know how to contact you. And
absolutely. The referral source is really two main things right off the bat, and that is the hospital. So a patient that's discharged from a surgery, for example, might need a little extra care or might need some coaching at home. And we'd be able to do that. The second piece is referrals from local physicians that would also notice that they may have a patient that just needs a little bit more help at home, and we can fill that gap. So those are the two main referral sources for us initially, and then once we get the program up and running, we'll see if there are other gaps that we can fill with the program.
yeah.
So it really is about the health of the community and keeping them out of expensive medical care.
It'll be a great resource and way to utilize your staff as well.
Absolutely, and they're thoroughly excited about it as well.
Thanks.
So I wanted to point out a few things. The days of an ambulance service just being for lack of a better terms, a meat wagon, somebody that takes them to the hospital. They go out, pick them up very quickly, and run them to the hospital, and that's it. That's all we did. Today's paramedics are much, much different. We really do provide advanced procedures on the scene of an incident and can do just some absolutely amazing things. A few things in here, I won't go into the specifics of each one of those. If you're in the medical field, you'll certainly probably understand those. But these are very advanced procedures. We're doing intubation, where we're putting a tube down somebody's throat to help them breathe. We're doing cricothyrotomies, where we actually make an incision into the neck and provide breathing for somebody who's had facial trauma. We do quite a few other things as well. Reductions of dislocations, if you've ever been skiing and seen anybody that's dislocated their shoulder, it's ridiculously painful. We have the ability to put that shoulder back in place now. I mention these only because we are one of the leaders in the state when it comes to advanced medical care on scene. Quite a few of these things, we are one of the first agencies to start here in the state. And the last one there, ketamine for analgesia. Ketamine is a drug that's used throughout the world, but not very much in the US. We're now using it in the field, and we were the first agency in the state to do so. So we are on the cutting edge, and we're pushing forward and making sure that we have the best possible care that we can here in our community. One of the big things that we do, and I'm sure you'll recognize some of these things, the Tough Mudder, X Games, Pro Cycling Challenge, all these major events that come into town here, they're a great thing for our community, but they do have their challenges, and some of those challenges are the medical side of things. Tough Mudder, for example, tens of thousands of folks that come to run it, and it's a tough mudder. So there's certainly patience with that. We deal with that. The X Games, certainly we're all familiar with that, 140,000 spectators. They're going to need medical care, not only for the activities that you're doing at X Games, but also just 140,000 people in one location. Somebody's bound to get sick or injured. And then certainly the Pro Cycling Challenge is a challenge for us, just because of the length of the course, and we cover that. So I did want to note down there at the bottom that our special events is something that we love as a community, love or hate, however you look at it. But we do, when we provide that service, we want to provide that same level of care to our visitors that come in for those special events. And that's our goal. All the special events we contract. So when a special event comes in town, they will contract with us to do that service. So this is not a taxpayer dollar that's being charged for these. This is strictly the special event organizers, which will pay us to do that service. We do have two services that we really provide them. One is providing them with a full ambulance and crew, and the other is a single resource, so one person. So there's quite a few smaller events as well, probably ones that don't even meet the standards of permitting, but certainly need some medical care. A wedding at the top of Aspen Mountain, when you're inviting folks from sea level, they don't do so well when you run them up there to the sun deck. So some of these larger events like to have at least an EMT or a paramedic on site that can provide that medical care. So I think it's a great resource certainly for our community to be able to provide that. And the fact that we do it well, as seen here on the slide, we see a huge amount of patients. We do a lot of transports and we do it well.
So on the Tough Mudder, you had 28 dislocated shoulders.
We did.
But you only transported 7 people there.
You
I mean,
got
so
it.
a lot of those guys were tough.
They were.
That's an amazing number of, that makes that event pretty scary.
It does, but I got to tell you, it's run well. I have to admit, of all the special events we see, they do a very good job. That's a really interesting thing that you picked up on. 28 shoulder reductions, and only 7 were transported to the hospital. Most of those 28, or we hope that most of those 28, actually went to see their physician, went to see an orthopedist afterwards. The scary thing, to your point, though, is that of those 28 shoulder reductions, quite a few of them, after we put their shoulders back in place,
Went back out.
went back in and ran and continued on the
So
race.
how many of those are repeat shoulder reductions?
Exactly. Well, they don't call it Tough Mudder for nothing, right?
Oh,
So,
Oh, stupid mother.
yeah.
I was going to say, I'll stick to the medical side of it.
Jeez.
The other thing we
Can I
do.
ask you a question?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Gabe, so what's the relationship then you have with these special events? Do they pay you a fee up front to be there?
They do. So what they'll do is through the permitting process, they come to us, tell us about their event, tell us the scope of the event, how many people will be there, and then we'll decide as a public safety group, police officers and firefighters as well, we'll decide what exactly they need, and we provide that to them. So, for instance, when the Tough Mudder first started here, they told us they had however many thousands of people running it, and here are the injuries that they see. We'll then come forward and say, we think that you need, X amount of ambulances, X amount of extra personnel, and then we'll contract for that amount. Some of those events have changed throughout the years. Certainly Tough Mudder, the first year we were here, just by the name alone and what we were seeing, we put a significant amount of resources on site, which they paid, every cent of for us to be there. As that event has gone on and we're able to streamline it, we've actually put a little bit less this past year than we have in years past. But we'll work with them and work with the organizers, and most of them, quite honestly, are very easy to work with. I think they realize that having good medical support there is key to having a successful event, for sure.
Is it required to have medical?
It is. So through the permitting process, it has to be reviewed by our agency for any need. And so really, once we put out there that they need a certain medical resource, however big or small it is required through the permit that they meet that.
And then how do you balance, so you have enough capacity to cover those and whatever events transpire in the rest of the community?
We do, absolutely. So what we do is we work with the other agencies in the Roaring Fork Valley as well, in a mutual aid basis where we all help out each other. We all have a set amount of resources, but when one of the larger events come into town, we pull from all of our resources. So Tough Mudder, for example, had representatives from Aspen, Snowmass, Basalt, and Carbondale. So we are able to provide that if it's a larger event. And so it works throughout the valley. If Basalt were to have a large event, we'll go help them. If Snowmass, during the Labor Day concerts, for example, they need a little extra help up there as well. So we'll move our folks up there. So as a group and as a team throughout the valley, we work well together and we can provide that service.
Great, thank you.
One of the things that happened at the first times we had X Games was one of the concerns about the participants not being insured and the costs that the hospital was then having to bear with these accidents and injuries that came in and there was no insurance. That was going to change, and I don't know if it did.
It
so
did.
Now they're required
It
as
did.
part of the event participation.
Absolutely. So all of the athletes, at least, and we certainly couldn't do that with the spectators, but all of the athletes are required to have insurance, and then ESPN also provides insurance for them as well at that period.
And then on top of that, when you treated these 28 dislocated shoulders, do you then bill? So you're getting paid for your time to be on site, and then you're getting paid for the treatments that you provide during the event.
No, actually, we get paid for being on site.
Right.
And it's an hourly
By the
fee,
event.
by the event. And then only if we transport that person do they receive a bill. That transport is really the key to moving them into a billing status. Those that we treat on scene, they get good medical care, and we do it as a benefit to the community. Certainly, some of those folks aren't from our community,
Right.
but it is a benefit for them.
So all those Band-Aids and eye wash are just kind of out of pocket.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it. We do feel like that the fee that we're charging them accounts for a lot of that as well.
Want to make sure that you're getting properly reimbursed for not just your time, but for supplies and things like that.
Certainly. What's interesting though is that the fee that we charge them is a fee to cover our costs, a fee to hopefully have a little bit on top, profit-wise, but for the most part, it's really just covering our costs. The odd thing about that fee, though, is there's really no standard for it.
Right.
In medical fees, certainly we can look around the country, we can look at other agencies, regionally, nationally, and we can develop a fee based on that. There really isn't one. So we're still, the nice thing is all of the agencies in the valley have worked together to create this fee structure. We all feel like it's appropriate. We don't want to go too high. We don't want to go too low though either. So, but we feel like we've got it at the right place now.
Right. Thank you.
One of the other things that we do is wildland fire medical support. Certainly wildland fire is something that we have to deal with in our communities. Certainly for Aspen, it's not an if it's going to happen, it's probably more of a when. But we work very hard along with the fire departments to make sure that we have a safe community. One of the things that the wildland fire community has really pushed lately is the medical side of things. We would send firefighters up into the middle of nowhere to fight a fire, and they'd hike for hours to get there. And then if they get there and somebody's injured, they had nobody to help them. So what we've done now is we have wildland fire medical support, where we'll actually put one of our paramedics with one of the wildland fire crews and go up and provide medical support for the firefighters. It's a great service for us to be able to provide to our partners, our teammates in the fire department, but it's also great for the community as well. We can make sure that we fight those fires in an effective way. And by doing so, we've got to have the medical support to back them up. So it's a great program. We started this about 2 years ago. We've been deployed on quite a few fires now. Our folks really enjoy it. They enjoy the camaraderie of it. They enjoy being able to help such a great group, and a group that we certainly value in our community. The other thing we do is critical care transport, and this is something that is definitely not normal to a small community, a small hospital as well. There are many times that a patient will come into Aspen Valley Hospital, and that patient has a significant injury or illness. The hospital here will stabilize them and put them in good shape, but they need specialty care. And that specialty care is either in Denver or in Grand Junction. And we have to get the patient there in some way. Certainly, everybody recognizes helicopters and airplanes that fly around our state for medical transport. But as you know how difficult it is to sometimes fly out of Aspen, it's the same way for these medical flights. So when those can't fly, we provide the transport to those locations via ground ambulance. And that's really important to do. That being said, keep in mind that these are the patients that are typically sicker or more injured than most. So they need a higher level of care on that transport, and that's what we provide. So we have 10 critical care trained paramedics, and they are able to do a much higher level of care than your normal paramedic. They do ventilator management. They have a much wider scope when it comes to pharmacotherapy, cardiac monitoring, analgesia, invasive monitoring, altitude compensation. What's really interesting is if you think about treating a patient here at our altitude, then we're going to take them down to Glenwood, and then we're going to take them up to Vail Pass, and then we're going to take them down and then up and down and up until we get all the way to Denver. Think about all those altitude changes, and all those change their care as we go. So we really do have some very, very highly trained paramedics that we certainly value, and they do a great, great job of it. The other thing we do, you'll probably recognize the pictures there from our airplane crash a couple of years ago now out at Sardi. We also do the medical care for those large disasters. Multiple staff for us are Type 4 qualified for incident management. We also have safety officers for Type 3 incidents as well. So it's a great tool for us to have. We not only provide medical, but we also provide the safety aspect for some of these large events as well. So, more to your question from earlier, 2015 changes. Certainly we talked about this with the reason for needing a mill levy change, and we have implemented everything that we've talked about in that. Very excited that 2015 for us has been a whirlwind year of making huge changes, and has really been just fantastic for our staff. First and foremost, we wanted to update all of our equipment, replace old and aging equipment, which we have done. Quite a bit of. We still have a little bit to go, and you'll notice that in the 2016 budget as well. But all of that's been done. We have done some structural changes. We now have an operations supervisor on duty every day, and they're able to provide not only supervision for staff, they provide incident management for any larger car accidents, for example, that we go on. And then they also have the ability to provide response for a second call. We would love to say that our calls are nice and spaced out, so we're relaxed throughout the day, we respond, but they never do. They all come at once. So our operations supervisor can now take an ambulance and be able to respond on those calls as needed. Staff education, we, as I mentioned earlier, we are a high-level service, but that takes a significant amount of continuing education to keep our staff current. And we've done that. We've added quite a few courses. We've done quite a few different lectures and education for our staff. Uniform standardization and replacement. We, as I'm wearing today, we now have a standard uniform that will hopefully keep us warm and keep us happy throughout the year.
Even here.
Yeah, especially on a day like today, a little chilly. So that's a great thing for our folks. We all look the same. We all, look professional, and when we walk into someone's home. Lean projects for us, we're working on quite a few things within our department at the hospital to really change the culture of what we're doing. We have a lot more staff accountability. We're doing a lot more small jobs around our quarters to really make it look nice, to make things efficient. Our reporting is better. Our just a little bit of everything. We've given that the reins to our staff to kind of lead us in where we want to go. And it has been an amazing culture shift this year. We really have done some fantastic things, and really morale has improved. We have really become a much more cohesive team because of a lot of these projects. Some of the other projects that we're doing outside our department are public education. We're doing a lot more CPR. We're doing a lot more community CPR education. We're doing a lot of first aid courses. And it's not, it's to everybody you think of. We do it not only for community members that just call us, but we also do it to agencies and groups. For example, last week we did a first aid CPR course for AVSC coaches. So we're really hopefully improving care all the way around for our community. Employee safety, you'll also notice in our budget that we've got a few extra things, one of those being a new ambulance. We're employing a lot of new safety items. There's quite a few things on the market right now that are really used safety-wise in vehicles, but also to save our staff. If you think about our staff, you know, it's tough to walk on icy ground anyway, but now try lifting a patient up on a bed while you're doing so, or climbing into a car. So we're adding in a lot more safety items throughout the year here in 2015 and then 2016. One of the big items that we're looking at is a loading system for the ambulance, where the bed that goes in the back of the ambulance, before we had to lift it up with manpower to get it in the back of an ambulance. It's a lot of weight, and you're lifting in a way that's not especially the best for your back. These new tools will allow us to have a hydraulic system that lifts them up into the back of the ambulance for us on slippery, icy ground that's worth more than you can imagine. For our staff. So we really are having a push towards employee safety as well. Just a few stats for you, and they're just kind of interesting to note. From 2012 to 2015, if you'll notice, our total call volume continues to go up. The 2015 volume, of course, is year to date through yesterday. And so we are on par right now to, if we take our average in December of 130 calls, we'll be significantly over our 2014 numbers as well. You'll notice the non-transport piece in there, and this comes back to your question earlier regarding who's charged for these calls. So to keep in mind that, you know, for as many calls as we go on, 29 to 36% of our calls are those that we don't transport. We go out, we help somebody out, we give them advice, we do simple treatments on them, things that they need. And we don't transport them, and we do that as a benefit to them, benefit to our community. We certainly believe in that. We believe it's important for us to have that resource in our community to go out and help them without them having to worry about a fee for doing so. So very happy to do that, but keep in mind though that that's 33% of our business, at least this year to date.
Yeah, what sort of percentage are transports come from on mountain?
That's a good question. It varies year to year, and it really is something that we track, but it's difficult. If we have a little bit wetter year and icier conditions, we'll see more injuries. If we have more powder, we may get a different injury pattern for that. But overall, we're looking at about 35 to 40% of our calls in the winter are ski related. So a significant amount, for sure. All right.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
but
no.
it goes back to, I think, one of Patty's earlier comments, because when you're taking people off the mountain, there's no guarantee that they have insurance to cover the costs, either from the ambulance service or then from the medical side from the hospital.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that, but they still deserve the same level of care, certainly, regardless of their ability to pay.
Yeah. Just curious, Dan, or someone, what sort of percentage of bad debt do you think comes from those who get transported from the ski mountains that don't have insurance? Any idea?
We don't segregate it by
You don't?
ski mountain versus non, but overall, about 3.5% of our revenue goes to that.
And we also have charity care. So if they don't have insurance and they qualify for one of the charity programs, then we assist them with the application process. And it would be nice to run as well.
All right, so a couple of things that we'll be looking forward to, bless you,
Thank you.
in 2016 is we do have a new ambulance purchase slated for 2016. Our ambulances we have on a 7-year replacement plan at this point. New ambulance, we talked about this a little bit when we talked about the mill levy, that ambulances, the cost continues to go up. There's nothing much we can do about that. But our new ambulance purchase, we're looking at about $180,000 for that new ambulance, and that's just the ambulance itself, not the equipment inside. But the nice thing is it will replace an aging ambulance and all that equipment throughout the last couple of years now we have replaced, so we'll just move that over to the new ambulance. So there is some cost savings there. We won't have to completely buy everything new. There is a possibility of a state grant for this, which is a 50-50 grant, which we'll certainly apply for. We hope to get that. It's not a guarantee, obviously, it's a grant, but we will be looking forward to that. The state grants open up in January, close in June, so we'll know in June whether or not we'll be able to use some of those grant funds for that.
George, this is not specific to this, but specific to what you said about the wildfire team that you have now. Is there any funding opportunities through that, through state wildfire protection, or I'm getting back involved in the healthy forest issues and with the Department of Safety now, whatever they call it, the state level. So I don't know if there might be some opportunities for equipment or anything, and I'll keep my ears open for you guys to see what comes up when I go to these meetings.
Well, that would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
You're making me think about, because I think the wildfire issue is really significant, and especially when we do mutual aid with that response, I think it's important.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
As we talked about earlier, the community paramedic program, we'll hopefully start that education here in the spring, program development in the summer, and then implementation in the fall, and be ready to go in the fall with that program. Again, I'm very, very excited about it. I think it's a great, great thing for our community, but it's still a new business, so we'll see how that goes. And then certainly the last big thing that we've got is our ambulance quarters construction project, big project. The things that we still have left on the table to deal with currently are the land and property questions. We're certainly looking into that right now and researching those, both with hospital and county. And then the next thing that's up for putting out there is the RFP for the architectural services. We hope to have that, we're guessing, by the end of the year, if not first part of next.
Can I? I think since this is the public sees these meetings, I think it's important for the public to note that, or to know that the need for the new facility there's a few reasons. One of them is that the bus doesn't fit in the barn anymore. And it's really critical to keep that equipment protected from weather extremes, so that's important. Plus, the inability to create a new facility because of the topographic, because of the slope factors and the residents in Meadowood, it's really critical that we find another appropriate site at that facility, on that campus out there. And I think the public, because with everybody building these days, the city, the county facility buildings, and then the public sees now the ambulance district, and I think there's a couple of very significant reasons why we need to move forward with a new facility. And in the long run, it's going to save us money with weatherization issues on our equipment out there, and response. It's easier to jump in a nice warm bus, and then you need to have it warm when you get to the scene. So I think those are things that the public really needs to be aware of.
Absolutely, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our hospital budget, and I'm going to invite Jeanette up here to talk. Well, took your chair. And I'll have her walk through this with you.
Okay.
Let me see if I can. So I don't know if you guys have it
We don't.
on your. Wait, let me hand out some printouts. Yeah, there should be enough in there. That way you guys can look at it, what I'm looking at. It'll be easier to read as well. So what Connie's passing around is basically the budget for the ambulance district for the year 2016. The second column towards your right is the 2015 budget, and the third one to the right is the 2015 projected. I've also done a variance column and a variance percentages, and the variances is comparing the 2016 budget to the projected 2015. Are we good so far?
Yeah.
2016.
2016 budget compared to the 2015 projection. Okay? So the patient service revenue that we're budgeting is $1,248,000. This revenue is derived from a slight decrease in volumes at about 0.5% and a 5% price increase for 2016. At the hospital, when we project our revenues, when we look at the volumes for the following year, we look at the country, the industry-wide, and the expectation of the different programs that we have implemented or that we expect to implement in the following year. So the reduction on the volume reflects what we expect the changes to happen. And the 5% price increase will also mirror image that of the hospital. We have the special events that Gabe described, and we are keeping the 2016 budget the same as we had for 2015. In 2015, we had events, and you can see that we're projected to have about $76,000 in special events, but we decided that it was more conservative to just budget the $60,000 that historically we have been receiving through the special events.
Why is that? Because you're projected for 2015 that you're going to have about $75,000 coming in contractual for special events. And if the special events are going to be similar, why wouldn't you just carry that same number over versus looking at a debit in there?
Well, that's the difficulty with the special events. Certainly, we know about some of the larger events in advance, but many of them we won't know until a month or two in advance. We can't always guarantee that some of these larger events will come back as well. When we started the budgeting process, for example, Tough Mudder, we did not know if they were going to come back. The Pro Cycle Challenge, we at this point don't know if they're coming back. So there are quite a few things that we really, there's a lot of unknowns in there, unfortunately. With our permit process, even a large event can come forward at a month before, and we won't know about it until then. So we felt that this was a good number to keep in there, just to allow for that variance, knowing that a lot of those big numbers that are in there are those big events that we just don't know about yet.
Now, again, revenue deductions, when we talk about the insurance discounts, the charity adjustments, that is basically what is being accounted under the revenue deductions. And this takes care of Medicaid patients and the adjustments for Medicaid and Medicare and insurance discounts. All of that is taken care on that line called revenue deductions. The way the payments, the patient billing happens, and the way the payments from insurance come into the hospital, they don't segregate what payment comes for the ambulance service versus the surgery versus the emergency department. We basically send one bill and we receive one payment. So in order for us to reflect what we expect the ambulance to collect is we basically, we mirror image the deductions for the hospital as an entity-wide, and we apply those same revenue deductions to the ambulance district. So basically, and I apologize, that schedule that you have on the screen doesn't have the total operating revenues, but the handout that you have does. So we have a total operating revenues of $1,049,000 compared to $974,000 projected for 2015.
Can I ask a question? So that percentage you were saying when you just For the revenue deductions, it's the same thing you do for the bad debt expense,
Correct.
isn't it?
Correct.
Okay.
Moving on to expenses, the largest expense as expected, it would be the salaries. We are budgeting about half an FTE more, half an FTE under for 2016 than what we have been experiencing through 2015. We also reflect in the salaries line a 3% price increase, not price, salaries increase when we do all of our annual appraisals at the in July of next year. We reflect the 3% price increase in there. And also in the salaries, there we have a supervisor. We have larger FTE under the supervisor that we've had in the past. So that should account for the variance. And right now, Gabe was talking about during the presentation that they have 30 employees. That accounts to about 13 FTEs, 13.2 FTEs. Our physician fees, this is our Dr. Martinez, who is the medical director for the ambulance department. There is no increase. The projection of 14.4 is actually not a correct projection. He gets paid 13.5, and his true amount is 13.5. There is no increase next year for him. Patient care supplies, again, these are the supplies that the ambulance use during the transports. And these are supplies that are purchased by the hospital, and we only expense what has been used by the ambulance district. We have miscellaneous expenses, which account for housekeeping supplies and dues and subscriptions, just small expenses for the ambulance district. We have the uniforms, and again, there is an increase when you look at the projected, but I believe our projection is actually understated for this year.
It is.
As
It
well.
is.
Which
We
should
have
be
a few items that are outstanding just because of the upcoming winters.
winter. So, and then again, the budget is being kept flat with the budget for 2015. Utilities, it has 10%, it's another $1,500. We're budgeting less than we expect. We expect the 2015 to be at, but it's slightly higher than 2015. Our maintenance contracts, we're expected to be very flat. We're at $10,500. Continuing education, like Gabe mentioned before, we're budgeting the $15,000 that we have budgeted for this year. We're projecting $8,000, but that may also be an understatement. I don't know if Gabe wants to add anything to that. Depreciation. Normally, the way the agreement works is any large capital acquisitions over $10,000 are purchased by the district, not by the hospital. They're budgeted by the county. But last year or the prior year, 2 years ago, we bought the pulse oximeters, and the hospital paid for the oximeters, and we decided to just bill you through the depreciation, mainly because those pulse oximeters are located at the hospital, I'm going to say. So anyway, so that one is cash that we have already paid for, but you're just being billed annually on the depreciation. Furniture, it's actually more minor equipment than it is furniture and fixtures, and this accounts for.
So there's quite a few things that are still outstanding. As I said, throughout the year we've replaced equipment. Some of those things have to be ordered, and they are due very soon.
On the fringe benefits, we are reflecting an increase of about 7%. The hospital is a self-insured entity, and the employees of the ambulance district are on the benefit plan for the hospital. The hospital employees are actually going to experience a 10% increase on their employee benefits. The ambulance district is only at 7% because we looked at each and every one of the employees and we try to mirror image what happens in there. We don't know with certainty what that number is until the year has been closed, so we can determine where the benefits actually fell. But we reviewed them as of September, and we determined that a 7% increase was appropriate for the ambulance district. Bad debt expense, again, we budgeted 3.4%, and that's what we expect the hospital to experience with regards to bad debt expense. And if you look at history, we normally have been around 4%, and this year is actually 3.4%. So we also, again, passed along the efficiencies that we have in our billing system. So based on the budget for 2016, we expect that the operations of the ambulance is going to cost about $335,000 in mill levy. For the budget for 2015, we expected it to be $339,000. We have a projection of about $300,000 for 2015.
So we have two different budgets for the ambulance. You've got a mill levy from the hospital that contributes this budget to the ambulance, and we have the mill levy from the county that contributes to the budget. Correct?
Just the
I
middle.
think probably Connie can explain it better, but as I understand it.
Because one of my questions, when I look at salaries, for example, from the AVH district, and when you look at the county budget for salaries, it's minuscule. It's like $4,000 only.
The salary part that is included in the county's 5-year plan for the ambulance district is only for facility staff. So that would be Jody and her crew and any time that they spend working on the ambulance barn or putting in time for their project. All of the other salaries are included in the hospital's budget, and then the county through the mill levy just pays the net cost that the hospital has for running the ambulance program.
Okay.
Good question.
And so the property tax, the mill levy is on the county side, and that mill levy is paying for the net cost of the ambulance service, plus any capital that's associated with it, whether that be the ambulances, the vehicles, equipment, or the facility. There's no property tax on the hospital side going in here. This is just patient revenue, special event revenue that is offsetting the hospital's costs.
Okay.
And the shortfall, the 335, comes from the ambulance mill levy that they collect. And normally we do, at the end of the year, once we have finalized our audit, we do a reconciliation and look at the true, either net loss or the true cost of the operation. And then if it's higher than the 335, the county reimburses the hospital, and if it's the other way, then the hospital reimburses the county for that difference.
Questions?
I have a question that's outside of the budget a little bit, so I don't know if anybody else has a budget question.
I just have one just for clarification. Today, are we just doing a decision point and not a heads, and then we do our formal approval starting at the first reading on December 8th?
That's correct. Today is just a decision point that if you're in agreement with what's being presented. And then on the 8th, this will be part of the overall budget resolution for all of the different county funds.
Okay.
So my question, this is an interesting question. I don't know where the talks went or if they're still going on about the merger of the fire district with the ambulance district. I've been contacted by a member of the community over this last year about, he was interested in putting out a ballot question to try and change the ambulance district, bring it into the folds of the fire district. That ballot question obviously didn't get anywhere, but have those talks kind of, I know they were really heated for a while. I think they've waned off. I don't think there's a lot of interest in doing that at this point.
I was going to say, I've been here 6 years and I've not been in talks with the fire department for that period of time, at least. At this point, there's nothing on the table to look at. Two very different agencies. A merger between the two would be difficult at best.
It'd be difficult for lots of reasons, because of the special districts on both sides, the special district boundaries on both sides, the funding, the mill levies, all of that. But it was, in a lot of communities, they've been able to do that, whether or not they had a special district for their ambulance or for their fire, or a lot of them were set up with the ambulance and the fire being in the same district. So, yeah, I didn't think that there was any going on outside of my knowledge, because it was some years ago, obviously prior to 6 years ago, that discussion was kind of, coming up, and it didn't get very far then, and I didn't expect that it's gotten anywhere since then. So, okay, just wanted to clarify that, that just because I told this constituent that I would bring it forward to see where the feeling was, because in talking with the county attorney, he received information on how to go about, it's an arduous task to get, because you'd have to have 2 separate petitions signed by people, one with the fire district. It was very, very complicated. Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, anybody else need to add anything? Dan, you back there?
Quietly sitting in the back
You're good to go?
with his jacket on, for he's nodding his head.
So, decision boards, we have a nod ahead to move this forward?
Oh, yeah, it was a good presentation. Thanks for all the information.
Good, thank you all for coming in.
Gabe, I'll keep you in the loop if I hear anything about any kind of wildfire funding
That would be
issues.
fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, that wraps us up for today, and we're here tomorrow at noon for our regular meeting.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good job, Mr. Chair.
And George, I found out Mike Kramer can come tomorrow about the X Games permit.
Perfect.
Great.
They have their structure permits in, and some have been approved.